Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're going deep into the world of dreams, trying to figure out this whole thing about cognition and consciousness and what dreaming even really is, you
Yeah.
know? We've got two really interesting sources for this one. Um, One's like a hardcore scientific paper. The other one's more like a research review kind of thing.
Okay.
But both are diving into how dreams actually work,
Yeah.
the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, for sure.
But like the big question we're going to try to tackle today is like, can we actually control our dreams? And should we even be trying to?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's something people have wondered about forever, right? Like since, well, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even just to begin to answer that, like what even is dreaming?
Right.
Like, is it just those crazy stories we sometimes wake up remembering?
Right. Well, not really. I mean, it's really any mental thing we can recall from sleep. It could be like quick images, emotions, even just weird thoughts that are just gone as soon as you have them.
So it's not all like flying through the air and stuff. Or being chased by, I don't know, like a giant talking pizza or something.
Exactly. Yeah, and trying to study that whole inner world is tricky.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, we basically have to rely on what people remember, which, well, can be a little unreliable, right?
Ah, yeah, for sure.
It's kind of like a game of telephone. The message can get kind of messed up along the way.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Plus, there's just so much we forget completely. It's like trying to put together, I don't know, like an ancient city, but with only a few pieces.
Wow, yeah, that's a great analogy.
Right. You get glimpses, but a lot of it is still a total mystery.
Totally. So how do we even start to figure this stuff out?
Well, a big part of it is understanding REM sleep and how it connects to dreaming. Most of the really vivid, story-like dreams come from REM sleep, but we can dream in other stages of sleep too. It's just,
Okay, so that's where lucid dreaming comes in, right? Like becoming aware that you're dreaming while you're still in the dream.
yeah, exactly.
That's just like mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's definitely captured a lot of people's imaginations.
Oh, for sure.
But I think there's this idea that it's all about control, like you suddenly become the director of your own dream or something.
Yeah, totally.
But really, becoming lucid is more about awareness. Actually, being able to change what's happening in your dream is way less common.
Oh, so it's more like, you're dreaming, but you can't necessarily make yourself fly or like conjure up a talking pizza.
Exactly. And the weird thing is being able to become lucid, it points to like a really unique neurological profile.
Really?
Yeah, like in sleep science, they actually consider it kind of abnormal.
Wait, abnormal. So if I can tell I'm dreaming, that makes me some kind of sleek weirdo.
Haha, in a way, yeah. But
Not-
it's actually that weirdness that makes it so useful for scientists. It's like this little peek into how our minds work when they're not connected to, the real world.
Oh, I see, like when they're off the leash a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. So that makes me think about the difference between like cognition and consciousness in dreams. What does it even mean to think when we're asleep?
Right, right. That's a big question. Basically, we can think of cognition in dreams as how memories are organized and activated, like how our brains deal with information during sleep.
So is that why sometimes you see something random in a dream and it triggers a really vivid memory from like childhood?
It could be. Like maybe our dreaming brains are making connections that we just don't see when we're awake.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is. But the thing is, we can't actually see these processes happening. We just have to figure them out from what people tell us about their dreams.
Right, but that's tough because people forget stuff and their memories can be, kind of fuzzy sometimes.
Exactly, exactly. It's a tough puzzle to put together.
For sure. So where does consciousness fit into all of this?
Well, if you think of cognition as the machinery, consciousness is the movie playing on the screen. It's the experience of those processes happening, like how vivid it is, the emotions, that feeling of actually being in the dream.
Okay, so one is the process and the other is what it feels like to go through that process.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
So does that mean if most of us aren't, lucid dreaming,
Yeah.
then we're not really conscious when we dream?
Not necessarily. I mean, even if we don't know we're dreaming, we still experience whatever's happening in the dream. It's just that our reality checking system, the part of our brain that tells us what's real and what's not, it's basically turned way down.
Oh, so that's why we can believe those weird things in dreams and it feels totally normal.
Exactly. It's like our brains are saying, just go with it. Don't question anything.
Haha, fair enough.
Eh.
But this brings us back to that whole control thing. Can we really learn to, like, steer our dreams? Like, become some kind of dream ninja?
Well, if we're thinking big picture, I think people mix up control with awareness when it comes to lucid dreaming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just knowing you're dreaming doesn't mean you can automatically control everything.
Right.
True control, like being able to actually change the dream however you want, is super, super rare.
Oh, so it's more like being an observer than, a puppet master.
Exactly. And it kind of makes you wonder, even if we could control our dreams, should we? Is that a good idea?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Like, I know there are people who use lucid dreaming to try and deal with nightmares, which, I mean, makes sense, right?
Yeah, there can definitely be benefits, but we have to remember that natural sleep is so important, and messing with it could have downsides.
So maybe it's better to prioritize good sleep over trying to have some crazy dream adventures every night.
I think so, especially because most of our dreaming isn't lucid anyway. Let your brain do its thing.
That makes sense. But I think a lot of people assume they just don't dream because they don't remember them. I mean, if we all dream, why do some of us wake up with these like vivid, crazy memories and others barely remember anything? That's a great question. And honestly, researchers are still trying to figure that out. It seems like some people are just better at like encoding and remembering stuff from their sleep. And there's some evidence that personality plays a role. Like people who are more imaginative or open to new experiences might remember their dreams more often.
Oh, interesting. So maybe if you're more in tune with your inner world, you're more likely to remember your dreams.
That's one possibility. But things like stress, how well you're sleeping, even what you do before bed can affect dream recall too.
So, like, the whole thing about eating cheese before bed giving you nightmares, is that real?
Haha, probably not. But what you eat and how you get ready for bed definitely can affect your dreams.
Interesting. That makes me think about just how different everyone's dreams are. Some are peaceful and calm, others are, like, totally intense and bizarre.
Yeah, totally. There are so many factors that affect what we dream about, our memories, experiences, and even just how our brains are wired.
It's almost like our brains are pulling from this huge library of memories and emotions and sensory stuff to create these totally unique stories every night.
That's a great way to put it. And one of the coolest parts of that is how our brains mix things up, creating these weird scenarios that just don't make sense in the real world.
Right, like it's normal to dream about your childhood pet riding a roller coaster with your boss or something equally ridiculous.
Exactly. It seems illogical, but that bizarreness might actually be a clue to how our brains process and store memories while we sleep.
Oh, wow. So maybe those crazy dream mashups aren't so random after all.
That's right. Our brains are working hard even when we're asleep.
That's amazing. But how do scientists even study this stuff? Dreams are so personal and hard to, like, measure.
That's the million-dollar question. But researchers are getting creative. One of the big debates right now is whether dreams are more like perception or imagination.
So, like, is it bottom up, starting with sensory input and building a dream from there? Or is it more top down, where thoughts and emotions create the dream world?
Exactly. That's the big question. And there's actually growing evidence that dreaming might be more like imagination.
So, like, it's our own mental movie created by our brains.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. There have been studies where they found that the part of the brain that's important for mental imagery, the temporoparieto-occipital junction, try saying that 3 times fast.
I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. Anyway, that area is also essential for dreaming. And if you can imagine things vividly, you're more likely to remember your dreams too.
So people who are good at picturing things in their minds are also better at remembering their dreams.
It seems that way. And in kids, they actually start remembering their dreams more as they get better at imagining things, like their dream worlds get more detailed and interesting as their imaginations grow.
That's so cool. So if dreams are more like imagination, does that mean our brains are basically coming up with a story and then adding in all the details like characters and settings and emotions?
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. And it could be why dreams are so often bizarre and don't follow the rules of logic. Like our brains are pulling random stuff from our memories and experiences and making a story out of it without worrying about whether it makes sense or not.
It's like those choose your own adventure books where anything can happen.
Exactly.
But there must be some differences between dreaming and just imagining things, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. The biggest one is that when we imagine something, we know it's not real. But in dreams, we often believe it completely.
Right, like our reality checker takes a break when we're dreaming.
Exactly. It's like the part of our brain that's always criticizing and analyzing stuff, it just chills out for a bit, and that allows for a more creative and free-flowing experience.
That makes a lot of sense. But then why are dreams so disconnected from the outside world? Like, why don't we incorporate what's happening around us into our dreams, even though our brains are so active?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, and something scientists are still trying to figure out. I mean, there are a few exceptions, like, if you really have to go to the bathroom or if there's a strong smell.
Right, right.
But most of the time, our dreaming brains just ignore what's happening outside.
Dude, so even if someone played loud music or shined a light in your face while you were dreaming, it wouldn't usually end up in the dream itself.
Yeah, that's right. Even directly stimulating the brain, like with transcranial magnetic stimulation, hardly ever creates conscious experiences in dreams.
Wow, so there must be something else going on that explains this disconnect. Do you think it has something to do with evolution? Like maybe it was safer for our ancestors to block out the outside world when they were sleeping?
It's possible. One theory is that the thalamus, which is like a relay station for sensory information, might be filtering out external input during sleep.
So it's like a gatekeeper, deciding what gets through to the cortex.
Mm.
Interesting. But what about the stuff that does get through? What makes us remember some dreams and not others?
Dream recall. Another big mystery. I mean, we know that memory areas in the brain are super active during REM sleep, but we often wake up with these huge gaps in our memory of the night before.
Yeah, totally. It's like trying to remember a movie you watched, but only catching a few scenes here and there.
Exactly. And it could be that the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in memory too, but is less active during REM sleep, is playing a role in this amnesia.
So maybe it's not working at full capacity, so those dream memories are harder to hold on to.
That's one possibility. But honestly, we're still figuring it out.
It's fascinating to think that something as basic as memory can be so elusive when it comes to dreams. What about those moments when you suddenly remember something from your waking life in the middle of a dream? Is that like our episodic memory trying to sneak in?
Well, not exactly. Things from our waking lives do pop up in about half of our dreams, but they're usually mixed into new and unrelated contexts. Actually, remembering a specific event that happened recently is pretty rare, only shows up in about 1.5% of dreams.
So it's less about reliving the past and more about creatively weaving it into the dream story.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that's where this idea of hyperassociativity comes in the way our brains mix different memories and experiences in these weird, illogical ways.
Like when you dream about your childhood pet riding a roller coaster with your boss.
Haha, exactly. It seems crazy, but this bizarreness might be a key to how our brains process and solidify memories during sleep.
Oh, wow. So those crazy dream mashups could be a sign that our brains are working hard, even when we're snoozing.
That's right. Our brains are incredibly complex and active, even in the depths of sleep. And honestly, the more we learn about the neuroscience of dreaming, the more we realize how much we still don't know.
It's true. There are so many unanswered questions about why we dream, what purpose they serve, and how they connect to our waking lives.
Exactly. And as we keep exploring these questions, I'm sure we'll discover even more mysteries and complexities about this fascinating part of being human.
Which makes me even more curious to dig into the next layer of this puzzle, the role of neuromodulators in shaping our dream experiences.
Ah, yes, neuromodulators. These fascinating chemicals are basically running the show in our brains, and their impact on dreaming is huge.
Yeah, they kind of act like the conductors of our brain's orchestra. They affect everything from our mood and how well we pay attention to, like when we sleep and wake up.
Right, right.
And their levels change a ton throughout the night, which could be one reason why our dreams are so different from one night to the next.
So you're saying that these chemical conductors are like deciding whether I'm going to have a peaceful dream or find myself in some crazy action movie?
Basically, there's a theory called the activation input mode model. Kind of a mouthful. But it suggests that this specific combo of high acetylcholine and low monoamines during REM sleep is what creates the perfect conditions for those bizarre and illogical dreams we often have.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to need a quick translation here. Acetylcholine, monoamines. Those sound like something out of a chemistry lab, not my brain. Haha, fair enough. Think of acetylcholine as like the on switch for brain activity. It keeps our neurons firing, whether we're awake or in REM.
So that's why we're not totally unconscious when we're in REM sleep.
Exactly. Now, those monoamines, things like norepinephrine, serotonin, and histamine, they're involved in regulating a whole bunch of stuff like mood, attention, and how we process sensory information. And during REM, their levels plummet.
So it's like our emotional and sensory filters are turned down, letting in all sorts of crazy stuff that would normally be blocked out.
Exactly. And this might also explain why we're so disconnected from what's happening around us when we dream.
Oh, I see.
Without those monoamines helping us process all that incoming sensory stuff, our brains are free to build their own world, which, well, often ends up pretty bizarre.
It's like our brains are taking a vacation from reality and just having fun with it.
Yeah, kind of a mental playground where anything goes.
I love that.
Yeah.
But how does this all connect back to that whole debate about whether dreams are more like perception or imagination?
Well, remember how we talked about the possibility of a top-down flow of information in dreams, kind of like when we imagine something? Well, some researchers think that having high acetylcholine during REM might actually boost that top-down processing.
Oh, interesting.
So basically, our brains were saying, let's close off the outside world and focus on what's happening internally. And with the monoamines taking a back seat, it's like all the rules are thrown out the window, making for a more free-flowing creative
You're
process.
right, right. It's like that inner critic in our heads is taking a nap so our imaginations can run wild.
Exactly. And that could explain why dreams often feel so fluid and unconstrained by logic and reality.
Yeah, totally. But what about those times when you wake up and remember a dream so clearly and then it just vanishes, like it never even happened? Does that have anything to do with these neuromodulators too?
It's a tough one, and researchers are still working on figuring out exactly why we experience dream amnesia.
It's frustrating though, right? It's like waking up from the most amazing movie and then forgetting the whole plot.
Haha. Yeah, I know the feeling. But it's possible that when we wake up and those monoamine levels start rising again, it might actually make it harder to remember our dreams.
So it's like our brains are switching back to real world mode and those dream memories get lost in the process.
That's one theory. As we become more alert and focused on what's happening around us, those dream images and feelings might just fade away.
It makes me wonder, what if we could find a way to wake up more gradually instead of being jolted awake by an alarm? Do you think that might help us hold on to those dream memories?
That's a really interesting idea, and it just shows how much we still have to learn about the connections between sleep, waking up, and memory.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fascinating area of research. Speaking of mysteries, what about those dreams that feel so real, so intense that we wake up feeling completely disoriented and confused? What's going on in our brains when we have those kinds of experiences?
Those moments of disorientation really highlight how disconnected we are from the outside world when we dream.
It's almost like our brains are trying to protect us from the outside world while we're sleeping, like they're saying, don't worry about what's happening out there, we've got this. But why would our brains go to such lengths to create that separation?
That's a great question, and we don't have a definite answer yet. One possibility is that this disconnect helps us process emotions and experiences without being overwhelmed by external stimuli.
So it's like a safe space for our minds to explore and experiment without the constraints of the waking world.
That's one way to think about it. And it could be why dreams can be so intense and emotionally charged. It's like our brains are allowed to feel and process things in a way that might not be possible or safe when we're awake.
That's fascinating. It's like our brains are saying, let's turn down the volume on the outside world and really crank up the volume on our inner experiences. But how do our brains actually create this inner world? What are the building blocks of these nocturnal narratives?
Well, like we've been talking about, memory plays a huge role. Our dreams draw on this vast collection of memories, experiences, and emotions we have stored up. But it's not just about reliving past events. It's more like our brains are taking these bits and pieces of memory and weaving them together into something new, something that's often pretty bizarre.
So our dreams aren't just passive reflections of our waking lives. They're more like creative remixes, blending familiar elements with new and unexpected twists.
Exactly. And that process of remixing and reimagining is where things get really interesting. It's like our brains are constantly experimenting, creating new possibilities out of the raw material of our lives.
It makes me wonder if we could somehow tap into this creative process. Could we use our dreams to solve problems, come up with new ideas, or even explore different parts of ourselves?
That's a question that's fascinated people for centuries. And while we're still a long way from fully understanding how to harness the creative power of dreams, there's growing evidence that they can be helpful for problem solving, gaining new insights, and even for artistic inspiration.
It makes you wonder if we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what our dreaming minds are capable of.
It's definitely possible. What if, beneath the surface of all those strange and seemingly random images, there are profound insights just waiting to be discovered?
That's an exciting thought. And it makes it even more important to pay attention to our dreams, not just dismiss them as random nonsense.
I agree. I think a lot of people feel like their dreams are just a jumbled mess of images and emotions that don't really mean anything.
Yeah, I can see that.
But even those seemingly nonsensical dreams can give us valuable glimpses into our unconscious minds. They can reveal patterns, anxieties, and desires that we might not be aware of when we're awake.
Yeah. Like a secret message from our subconscious.
Exactly. And sometimes those strange dream images can spark creative breakthroughs or help us see old problems in a new light.
It's like our brains are working on things behind the scenes, even when we're not consciously thinking about them.
Exactly. And the more we learn about the neuroscience of dreaming, the more we understand how those unconscious processes can affect our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors when we're awake.
It really is a fascinating field, and I have a feeling the more we explore these questions, the more mysteries and complexities we'll uncover about this amazing aspect of human consciousness.
Absolutely. And who knows what incredible insights are waiting for us as we continue to delve into the world of dreams.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of dream cognition and consciousness. We've covered so much, from defining what dreaming even is to how neuromodulators shape our experiences. But there's one more fascinating aspect we need to explore, the social and cultural side of dreaming.
Ah, yes. That's a really interesting topic. The way dreams are interpreted and understood in different cultures and societies is fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that something so personal, something that happens inside our own heads, can be shaped by the world around us.
It really is. And in a lot of cultures, dreams have been seen as this source of wisdom, guidance, even prophecy, for centuries.
Yeah. I remember reading about how in some indigenous cultures, dreams are seen as a way to talk to ancestors or spirits.
Exactly. And in some traditional societies, people share their dreams and interpret them together, like as a community. And they often use dreams to make decisions or even for healing.
So it's like dreams are a shared experience, not just an individual one.
Yeah, I think so.
No.
And how they interpret them can be totally different depending on the culture. Like, for example, dreaming of water might mean purification or renewal in one culture, but in another, it could be a warning about danger.
Wow, that's interesting. So the same dream image can have completely different meanings depending on your cultural background.
Exactly. So it's super important to understand the cultural context when we're trying to make sense of our own dreams or even someone else's dreams.
It makes you wonder if our own culture is shaping the way we dream, even if we don't realize it.
Right. Our beliefs, our values, even the stories we hear, all of that can affect how we understand our dreams.
It's like we each have our own personal dream dictionary in our heads,
Mm.
based on our culture.
And those dictionaries can be incredibly diverse, filled with all these symbols and metaphors and archetypes that reflect, well, just the whole human experience.
It's just wild to think about how something so personal and internal as dreaming can be so connected to, like, the social and cultural world we live in.
I know, it's fascinating, right? It really shows how connected we all are, even when we're in the world of our dreams.
This has been such an awesome deep dive. We've explored how our brains work during sleep, the mystery of dream consciousness, and now the cultural side of dreaming.
Yeah, it's been a real journey. And it's clear that there's still so much more to learn about dreaming.
Absolutely. But who knows, maybe someday we'll figure out how to use the power of our dreams, not just for fun or self-discovery, but also for healing, for creativity, even for understanding consciousness itself.
That would be incredible. But even without fully understanding all the mysteries, dreams give us this amazing glimpse into how our minds work. They remind us of how powerful and creative we all are.
So true. So tonight, when you're drifting off to sleep, remember that you're entering the most amazing virtual reality machine ever, your own brain.
Haha, exactly. Sweet dreams, everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of dreams.